Bienvenidos a nuestra junta de la revisión de la importación de agua a largo plazo. Esta junta es del panel de revisión independiente. Es una junta de informe de evaluación. So welcome everybody, long-term water importation review from the independent review panel. And this meeting is our screening report meeting. And excuses for putting you on the wait room for a little bit. We just wanted to make sure everybody was here when we started. Disculpen por haberlos hecho esperar un poquito, nomás queríamos saber que todos estaban aquí cuando comenzáramos. Para comenzar, mi nombre es Azucena Beltrán, yo soy la coordinadora de este grupo y quería dar unas reglas. Por favor, silencie su audio cuando no esté hablando. Hacia el final de la reunión lo abriremos para preguntas del público. Levante la mano si desea hablar.
California, they start in Spanish here.
Okay, just a minute. Si está en la línea telefónica, presione el número 9. Please turn on your audio on mute when not speaking. This meeting is actually, I will be translating in real time. It's just a few disclaimers. So you will be hearing both Spanish and English in the same audio channel. We just don't have a separate translating room, and it's not a substantive meeting, so please bear with us. My name is Azucena Beltrán, and I am the project coordinator of this group. I just want to welcome you all with some ground rules to please turn on your audio on mute when not speaking. Towards the end of the meeting, we will open it for public questions. Please raise your hand if you wish to speak when we get to that point. And if you're on the phone line, please press number 9. Por favor, siéntese libre de hacer preguntas en el chat en cualquier momento, pero recuérdese que las contestaremos al final de la junta. Feel free to ask your questions on the chat as they come up to you, but please note that they won't be answered until the end when we open it up for questions. Por favor, sea cortés con los otros participantes. Please be courteous to one another. Si en algún momento en esta junta usted llega a faltar al respeto a uno de los participantes, usted estará llamado a que sepa que sería sacado de la llamada por uno de los huéspedes de nosotros. If at some point you're disrespectful to somebody in this Zoom call, please know you will be dropped from the call by one of the hosts. Tenemos dos invitados, al presidente del panel, Rominder Suri, se unirá con nosotros al principio, y el investigador del proyecto, Brent Haddad. También tenemos a otro de nuestros coordinadores, Darío León. Well, we have 3 guests in this meeting. We have our panel chair, Rominder Suri, joining us at the beginning, and project principal investigator, Brent Haddad. And we also have another team member, Darío León, helping us with support. Para comenzar, Rominder nos podría decir cómo van las cosas con el panel de independiente de revisión. So to begin, Rominder, I wanted to ask you to tell us how are things going with the independent review panel.
Sure, thank you, Azucena. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this public meeting. And on behalf of the panel, I can say that we are making very good progress in our review process, and I'd like to thank the wonderful team from UC Santa Cruz, led by Professor Brent Haddad, and also the team from Kennedy Jenks. And last but not the least, many thanks to Azucena for providing a wonderful coordination to our meetings.
Rominder dice, hola, buenas tardes a todos. Está muy feliz de estar aquí. Quería darle gracias a todos por su tiempo de asistir a esta junta y agradecer a Azucena Beltrán por coordinar este evento. Anything else, Rominder, you wanted to say?
I think we can move on to the next question.
Okay. Rominder, ¿nos podría decir cómo van las cosas con el panel independiente? So another question for Rominder I have is, tell us how are things going with the panel, with the independent review panel right now, please?
Yeah, so we made significant progress. We've been meeting almost weekly, and many have had many discussions and assignments, and in our review process. And so at present, we are doing the fatal flaw analysis.
Reminder dice que ahorita estamos haciendo el análisis de fallas fatales. Es el trabajo que ahorita está haciendo el panel independiente, pero esta junta es sobre el informe de evaluación. Next question is, Reminder, what is going to be presented today? ¿Qué se va a presentar el día de hoy, Reminder?
Yeah, sure. So we have had completed one report, which is the screening report, and that has been unanimously approved by all the panel members. And we had, as I mentioned, a lot of wonderful support from our support teams at Santa Cruz and Kennedy Shanks. And today, Professor Brent Haddad will be sharing some details on that screening report with you.
Reminder dijo que ahorita el primer reporte llamado el informe de selección ha sido aprobado por unanimidad por el panel. Reminder le pidió al investigador principal del proyecto que se los presente y quería agradecer mucho al equipo de apoyo de la Universidad de Santa Cruz por ayudar en este proceso.
So I'll pass the baton to Professor Brent Haddad, who is the principal investigator of this project. And
thank you. Ahorita le pasará la lead al principal investigador, Brent Haddad.
And thank you, and Reminder, Chair Suri, very much, and greetings everyone.
Brent dice gracias, Reminder, y buenas tardes a todos.
And Reminder, thank you for joining us from the East Coast. And it's late there. If you need to step away early, that will be just fine. We'll take it from here.
Dice gracias, Reminder, por asistirnos desde la costa este, y a nosotros ahora manejaremos la junta de aquí.
So Azucena, do you have, would you like to continue by asking me questions, or?
Of course. So, Brent, I have the question that I believe is the main one, right? Everybody's here. Would you care to please explain to us what the screening criteria is? Brent, por favor, nos podría decir cuáles son los criterios del reporte, por favor?
Sure. So we were asked by the state we being UC Santa Cruz, to convene a panel and to evaluate the submissions to the call for information on water importation.
Entonces, nosotros estamos aquí con el panel y estamos evaluando las sumisiones de importación de agua. Brent, please tell us, what is your role on the project?
I'm the principal investigator. What that means is I'm not on the panel itself, but I convened the panel, and I am the point of contact with the state, with the SSMP. Go ahead and, yeah.
Ok, le pregunté a Brent que cuál era su papel en el proyecto, y él es el investigador principal. Él comunica el proceso del panel con las agencias que son parte del programa de gestión de Salton Sea.
And so the panel is the decision-making body, but I'm coordinating both the panel and the support team for the panel.
Y el panel son los que hacen las decisiones de la revisión de importación de agua y Brent viene siendo supervisor de que todo esté de acuerdo al contrato que tiene el panel con el Estado.
So I think we can get back to your previous question.
The screening criteria.
Yeah. So the first thing the panel has completed is to review all the submissions, and the criteria I can share with you. So for this first screening, we used two criteria, and you can read them there. The first one was that the submissions must have a water importation component. Do you want to translate that?
Yeah. Entonces, aquí Bren está enseñando los dos criterios de selección que el panel escogió. Y primero, el criterio número 1 es de que deben de tener un componente de importación de agua.
The second one, second criterion is that the submissions must be complete and provide enough information that it can be evaluated. And you can see the 5 criteria or sub-criteria we had for what it means to have a complete submission.
Y el otro criterio es de que los componentes deben tener una sumisión completa. Y hay 5 subcriterios en eso, que serían la identificación del equipo del proyecto, una descripción narrativa de los conceptos, el diseño y proceso del proyecto, el cuánto va a costar el proyecto y los planes que hay en cómo agarrar dinero para poder empezar el proyecto. Son 5 subcriterios que están en la solicitud y están en español en la página del Estado.
So that is the extent of this first report. And they're fairly simple criteria, a water importation component and a complete submission or complete enough submission.
Y pues esos son los criterios de la evaluación, de que sean una importación de agua y que sean completos en su totalidad. Are we ready for the next question, Brent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, which submissions didn't meet the criteria? Siguiente pregunta es, ¿cuáles submisiones no pasaron el criterio?
So only 5 of the 18 did not meet these 2 criteria, and I'll name them by the names of who submitted them. The ACOM submission, the SIM group, Transform Water and Power, Quantum Consultations, and a submission from Jeff B. Garachi. All others passed this phase of the screening report.
Okay, so 5 submisiones del total que habían eran 18 y solamente 5 fueron eliminadas en esta evaluación. Y esas son, vamos a nombrarlos por los equipos que hicieron la sumisión, que viene siendo ACOM, SIM, equipo SIM, Transform Water and Power, Quantum Consultaciones y un individual llamado Jeff B. Gerazzi.
Let me go into a little bit of explanation about why they didn't pass and what it means. In the case, oh, go ahead.
Ahorita Brent va a explicar por cuáles fueron las razones que estos equipos no pasaron a esta evaluación.
So in the case of ACOM, they are, as is well known, a worldwide infrastructure consulting firm. And ACOM proposed to review previous importation concepts and develop a strategy for the state. And what they offered to submit was basically a matrix of importation options and alternatives. So, and this, and I guess just to make the point about what we're doing, the panel felt that ACOM could certainly do this and was fully qualified to do this, but the request for information, the RFI, called for an actual importation project, and that's not what ACOM proposed.
Bren quisiera ir en detalle cuáles fueron las razones cuales no pasaron esta evaluación. Primero con ACOM, es una empresa de consultoría de infraestructuras y ellos propusieron revisar los conceptos y enfoques anteriores y desarrollar una estrategia. La estrategia incluiría una matriz de opciones y alternativas y básicamente ellos dieron una serie de explicaciones de cómo ellos podrían hacer el trabajo. El panel está seguro que este equipo sí tiene todo en su capacidad para poder ejecutar cualquier proyecto, pero la solicitud de información llamaba por un tipo de proyecto el cual no fue presentado en la sumisión de ACOM.
With Sim Group, they are a major real estate development firm, and they teamed up with IDE Technologies. That's another international firm that develops, builds, and operates water treatment systems. In their submission, nearly everything was marked proprietary. And we weren't able to identify who at these two large companies had made the submission, so we couldn't find out what the actual proposals were. They were proprietary. So we marked it as incomplete.
El siguiente equipo es el equipo llamado SIM, C-I-M, y este equipo en compañero con otro equipo llamado IDE Tecnologías, son promotores de bienes raíces que vienen siendo como propiedades. Y esta empresa es una empresa internacional que desarrolla y construye y opera sistemas. Casi todas las partes de la sumisión de este equipo fueron marcadas como propietarios. Así que nosotros, o sea, el panel no podía ver la información que ese equipo entregó como respuesta a la solicitud de ideas. Así que el panel no pudo identificar tampoco cuál fue el individuo de esos dos equipos quien dio esta sumisión. Así que nosotros no tuvimos manera de poder contactar al individuo para poder agarrar la materia que no estaba marcada como información propietaria.
So Transform Water and Power is a consulting and systems engineering company, and it teamed up with 4 other companies: New World Water, Floto Rack Corporation, ABB, and Development, Design, and Engineering. And the team submitted an interesting concept for a floating combination of solar energy panels and water vapor capture and condensers for the surface of the Salton Sea. And Transform Water and Power recommended a pilot project to ascertain how much water could be captured and returned to the Salton Sea. and how much energy it can generate and other operating data. And the reason it's on this list is because it's an evaporation capture and return concept and not considered to be an importation approach. So, well, go ahead, Same.
Okay. El siguiente equipo se llama Transform Water and Power y esta es una empresa de consultoría, ingeniería y sistemas. Se asoció con otros 3 grupos que vienen siendo New World Water, Flotorec y ABB y Developmentación. El equipo presentó un concepto de un cierto número de paneles que cuando combinados flotan y son de paneles que son de energía solar. Y también mencionan un sistema de condensadores que captura el vapor de agua en la superficie del Salton Sea. El equipo recomendó un proyecto piloto para determinar cuánta agua podría capturarse y devolverse al Salton Sea debido a la evaporación, cuánta energía podría generarse y otros datos operativos. Dado que se trataba de un concepto de captura-retorno de evaporación, no se consideró como un enfoque de importación de agua, que fue la razón por cual este equipo fue eliminado.
And again, this is a concept the panel found very interesting, only it doesn't fit the criteria to continue in this review.
Este fue un concepto que el panel independiente comentó que fue muy interesante, una tecnología muy interesante, pero simplemente no cae dentro de las 2 criterios de evaluación que el panel decidió.
And the same can be said for the next 2 that I'm going to discuss.
Y lo mismo se puede decir de las siguientes 2 que Brent va a describir.
So quantum consultations, it specializes in identifying community-based, academically founded solutions to conservation problems. It's headquartered in the Coachella Valley, and their concept focuses on managing and improving the exposed playa surrounding the Salton Sea, including dust suppression and habitat creation for both plants and fish, as well as trails and a visitor center. However, the submission did not include a water importation component.
El siguiente equipo fue Consultaciones Quantum. Este equipo se especializa en identificar soluciones basadas en la comunidad y académicamente fundadas para problemas de conservación. Tienen su oficina en el Valle de Coachella y su concepto se enfoca en administrar y mejorar la playa expuesta que rodea el Salton Sea, incluida la supresión de polvo y la creación de habitaciones para plantas y peces, así como senderos y un centro de visitantes. Sin embargo, la presentación no incluía un componente de importación de agua.
And finally, Jeff B. Garachi submitted a plan for revegetation, for a revegetation process along the receding Salton Sea shoreline. He would use native plants and soils to control dust emissions from the playa, and he would establish a series of palm-shaded oases capable of rearing the desert pupfish and mosquito fish. He would utilize a small amount of existing inflows from the New and Alamo rivers to establish the oases. Because this project is a reallocation of existing inflows, the panel doesn't consider it to be an importation concept.
El siguiente y último concepto que fue eliminado fue el que fue sometido por Jeff B. Geraci. Él presentó un plan para un proceso de revegetación a lo largo de la costa del Salton Sea que se está secando. Utilizaría plantas y cierto tipo de tierra para controlar las emisiones de polvo de la playa y establecería una serie de oasis a la sombra de las palmeras, capaces de criar el pez cachorro del desierto y el pez mosquito. Utilizaría una pequeña cantidad de las entradas existentes de los ríos New y Alamo para establecer los oasis. Debido a que el proyecto está resignado a las entradas de agua existentes, el panel no lo considera como un concepto de importación.
You know, we have a slide of the submissions that are still under consideration, and perhaps I could share that now.
Brent tiene ahorita una imagen que enseña ahorita los conceptos que todavía están bajo consideración.
So the numbers on the left, R2, R4, etc., were assigned by the panel just so we could keep track of all the submissions. But these are the remaining concepts that the panel is advancing to the fatal flaw criteria process.
Entonces aquí ve una lista de los equipos que se van a mover para el análisis de fallas fatales, donde mira R2, R4, R5, todo eso se refiere a una numeración que le dimos a cada equipo. R es por respuesta a la solicitud.
Okay.
Okay, so Brent, what happens to these projected proposals now? Ahora, ¿qué le va a pasar a los conceptos que fueron eliminados?
The useful aspects of them are being forwarded to SSMP and the committees that SSMP has created. And they are also being retained by the panel for further consideration.
Los aspectos útiles de los grupos que no pasaron al siguiente paso, esos aspectos útiles de esos proyectos están siendo enviados al programa de gestión del Salton Sea y también a los comités que están bajo ese programa de gestión y están siendo retenidos también por el panel para ver si habrá más consideración en ellos más adelante. So does the screening report go into the fatal flaw analysis of the screening? Entonces, el reporte de evaluación se va a ir a las fallas fatales de la evaluación.
These first two parts of the panel's work are separate. We've finished the screening report, which we've just talked about. And now the panel is working on what we call the fatal flaw analysis. And that is a much more detailed analysis of the remaining submissions for problems that the panel considers so serious that it can't endorse that approach.
Entonces, hay dos términos diferentes los cuales pueden familiarse. Este es el informe de evaluación y eso tiene que ver con lo que pedía la solicitud del Estado y del panel. Y el análisis de fallas es lo que viene después y es el siguiente reporte que va a salir. Y este reporte tiene que ver con el contenido de las sumisiones, si hay una falla fatal en ellas o no. So Brent, can you go into detail of the differences between the screening and the fatal flaw reports?
The screening report is about the form of the submissions, and the fatal flaw is about, the fatal flaw analysis is about the substance of the submissions.
Así como retiré antes, le pregunté a Brent que si podría decir la diferencia entre los dos reportes, y como dije, es el informe de evaluación, tiene que ver con la solicitud, que si está en acuerdo con lo que la solicitud pedía y está completo, y el siguiente reporte, que es el análisis de fallas fatales, tiene que ver con el contenido de las sumisiones, que no haya una falla fatal en ella. Brent, where can I access the screening report? ¿Dónde podré yo tener acceso a este reporte de evaluación?
It is now posted, and I will put into the chat a link where you can download it.
Por ahorita, el reporte está en una red pública y Brent está poniendo el link a esa página donde podrá bajar el reporte, si gusta.
Yeah.
Okay. ¿Cuándo fue cuando el panel fue completo o fue decidido que ya estaba completo? So, Brent, when was the panel established?
We appointed our chair, Dr. Suri, in August of 2021. And by the beginning of November 3rd, in fact, we had fully established the panel.
Entonces, para poner en perspectiva en el tiempo de esto y que apenas estamos dando un reporte, se está presentando un reporte de evaluación, el principal del panel fue contratado en agosto del 2021, pero el panel entero, o sea, sus otros 6 miembros fueron contratados en noviembre 3 del 2021. No más para poner en perspectiva. Otra pregunta para Brent. El panel ha visitado la región. Another question for you, Brent, is, well, has the panel visited the region?
Yes, all of them. From November 6th to 10th in 2021, they visited most of the major infrastructure sites of all of the submissions, including down in Mexico.
La respuesta de Brent es que sí, el panel visitó la región desde noviembre 6, entre los días de noviembre 6 y noviembre 10 del 2021, y lo que hicieron ellos fue visitar los sitios que fueron mencionados en los conceptos que hicieron una sumisión a la solicitud, incluyendo sitios mencionados en México, además de sitios en Salton Sea. And Brent, how was the panel chosen?
The support team did a national, in fact, international search for highly qualified individuals who had no conflict of interest. And there was a set of qualifications that the state wanted to have represented, and all of the qualifications, such as engineering, law, economics, community, and others, all are represented on the panel.
Le pregunté a Brent que cómo fue que se escogió el panel, y nosotros, o sea, la Universidad de Santa Cruz, hicimos una revisión de calificaciones que coincidieran con las categorías establecidas por el Estado. En ellas eran requisitos como profesionalismo en ingeniería, expertos en sistemas de agua y etcétera. So Brand, what has the panel been doing ever since the public meeting held in October 27th of last year?
Let me share again. Yeah, go to slideshow. So here along the top are dates. And so we established the panel last summer, spent several months studying and becoming familiar with the submissions. And our site trip was here in October. And then we worked on the screening report. And then as we were completing the screening report, we took up the fatal flaw analysis. So these are the main steps of, I guess right here, this was the second solicitation that the panel sent out. There was the original solicitation in 2017, 2018, and then the panel itself repeated that solicitation in 2021.
Entonces la pregunta que le hice a Bren era ¿qué ha hecho el panel desde la última junta pública que hubo, que fue en octubre 27 del año pasado? Aquí Bren les está enseñando una figura de la línea de tiempo de lo que ha estado haciendo el panel. Pueden mirar a la izquierda las actividades y arriba, en la línea de arriba va a mirar cuánto tomó en tiempo esta actividad. Por ejemplo, cuando el panel fue establecido, básicamente casi durante el verano, cuando se familiaron con los envíos que fueron sometidos, la supervisión de las solicitudes del 2021, sus viajes a los sitios mencionados. Y como ahorita puede ver que acabamos el informe de evaluación y cuando estaban acabando el informe de evaluación también se estaba empezando el análisis de fallas fatales. Well, hopefully that answered a lot of questions. Maybe a lot of you must have had prior to attend the meeting. Ojalá esto haya contestado muchas de sus preguntas que a lo mejor tuvieron antes de atender esta junta. Ahora nos podemos mover a las preguntas que hay en el chat. So now we can move to the questions that are on the chat. If possible, Darío, would you be able to point those out to us? Si es posible, Darío nos va a apuntar de unas preguntas que están en el chat.
Yes, we had one by Chris Cockcroft saying, did the group find that water import is feasible as an engineering project? Is it seawater importation actually doable?
Chris Croft está preguntando que si el panel decidió que si encontró que si la importación de agua era algo feasible como un proyecto de ingeniería. Entonces, la pregunta sería que si la importación de agua del mar sería algo que se podría hacer.
Chris, that is exactly what the panel is working on right now. They're working on their fatal flaw analysis of all the submission concepts for importation. And in fact, at some point, I have one more slide, which I'll share with you that gives you the timing of when we expect to have the answers to that. Yeah, so that's, the panel doesn't have an opinion one way or the other yet, but that's what it's working on right now. It's screened out the non-importation concepts, and now it's working on, is it feasible as an engineering concept? In fact, that's in some ways how it's framed. Partially, that's how it's framed by the panel.
Entonces ahorita no se puede, el panel no está todavía con una opinión de que si es factible poder hacer un proyecto de ingeniería que traerá agua del mar o no. Es justamente en lo que ahorita está trabajando el panel, tratando de llegar a una decisión general de que si será posible o no.
Why don't we go to Ronald Spears next?
That is with the hand up, Ronald Spears.
We're having trouble hearing you, Ronald.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Now
Yes.
we can.
Okay, hi. Thank you for holding the panel. First, I'd like to ask you a question, since you are the chairman of the panel. Has there been a study done that you know of, or that you can refer me to, for a plan to bring water from the Pacific Ocean, considering somewhere in the neighborhood of Oceanside, to the Salton Sea?
Ronald está preguntando que si le podría informar si hay un estudio que trae agua del Pacífico al Salton Sea.
Well, first, Ronald, I am the principal investigator of this project, but Dr. Suri is the chair of the panel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
No, quite
Okay.
all right. But the answer is we have a few submissions that focus on moving water from the California Pacific coast to the Salton Sea.
Okay, that's great. And I just have to, I'm sorry, make one suggestion, and it's not meant to be disrespectful, but at the University of, where are you, Santa Cruz, I believe, you probably have a language department. And I'm sure at the language department, they do have a translator or translation system. To me, this is extremely complicated to follow, because I'm going back and forth from English to Spanish, and I'm losing my train of thought when you're speaking, and then it's being translated into a Spanish thing where you haven't completed your thought process. And I'm trying to go back to find out, try to remember what you said in the first place. So if you can make it a little more fluent to where everything, and plus you're decreasing your time of your seminar by 50% by doing this. Just so you know, just so you know, so you're aware of that. I would just suggest the next time that you make it much more user-friendly to the people that are not Spanish-speaking people, and the people that need the translation, or vice versa. You can have two separate meetings, one entirely in Spanish, one entirely in English, whatever's the easiest for you to do. But it's really difficult to go back and forth. Plus, we're getting subtitles that are supposed to be doing the Spanish translation that has nothing to do with the Spanish translation. I mean, they're just gibberish words that are being printed out, and it's not translated at all. You know, when the host lady is speaking in Spanish, we're getting all kinds of different words that make no nonsense at all.
Thank you.
Okay. Just wanted to make it to your
Thank you.
observation.
Appreciate that feedback very much.
Okay. Okay.
Would you like to translate that?
Yeah. So Rob Simpson, a la respuesta que le dio Brent a Rob Simpson era de que sí habían conceptos que traen agua del Pacífico al Salton Sea y que actualmente están siendo investigados más por el panel. Rob Simpson está dando un comentario de que si por favor podría haber otro modo de traducir y haber otro canal para no tener que traducir el español al mismo canal, ya que trae confusión y hace que el tiempo sea alargado.
If you don't mind, Dario, why don't we go straight to Maximiliano Ochoa's written comment, and then we'll do Rob Simpson next. Maximiliano writes, concepts are great. What other hurdles are there? Environmental review, costs, international agreements, regional agreements?
Maximiliano pregunta que los conceptos están bien, pero ¿qué otros objetos hay entre ese camino? Costos del medio ambiente, costos internacionales y regional.
And they're part of the fatal flaw review we're doing. And then the next step after that, which is a feasibility study, covers all of these other items that you listed, Maximiliano, and more, including public health, for example. Yeah, the panel is looking comprehensively at these submissions.
Brent responde a Maximiliano que su pregunta sería hallado las respuestas en el informe de factibilidad que pasará en los siguientes meses que están por venir.
Rob, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you, Brent. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, very good. This has to do with the essential traits of a fatal flaw analysis and a couple of specific issues. Number one, the entire Salton Sea, Laguna Salada, the Northern Gulf of California exist in an active rift valley. Near Laguna Salada, there is a particular detachment fault with an associated graben, which under earthquakes, rather than moving strike-slip manner, it actually subsides. In the 2010 earthquake, we saw about 70,000 acres of the Colorado River Delta subside due to largely liquefaction event by as much as 5.5 feet. This induced greater tidal inundation. Recently, NASA, NOAA, JPL released a joint paper regarding, and I'll try and read the title off exactly, rapid increases in extreme months in projected flooding in the United States, high tide flooding. Basically, they're talking about sunny day flooding in places like La Jolla, Southern California, that are going to be essentially about 5 or 0.5 meters above the standard datum. And I've been looking at what's going to happen at the Gulf of California. Essentially, a 3-meter tidal range down at Cabo San Lucas translates to a 6-meter tidal range 2/3 of the way up at the island archipelago, whereby everything north of that in what's termed the Northern Gulf of California. So you have a 6-meter tidal range up there. And then as...
so we have time for all the questions. If you could get to your question, okay, that would be great. And then we can follow up later on.
Specifically, have you and will you include Laguna Salada is going to flood in the next 20 to 30 years if Mexico does not spend money to stop it. this is going to be a feasibility issue for several of the projects. Because of sediment redistribution, you're going to have a lot of tidal flooding in the Northern Gulf. These projects, if they're going to have a 30+ year time frame, really need to consider what's in that paper and how sea level rise, the increased tidal pull of elevated waters in the Pacific are pulled into the ear horn shaped Gulf of California, inducing much higher tidal amplification far to the north.
I think I have it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Azucena, do you want to?
Quería decir que no soy una traductora profesional, pero básicamente lo que quería decir, Rob dio datos sobre la biosfera y la ecología de la Laguna Salada, y le pregunta a Brent que la Laguna Salada se va a hundir en los siguientes 20 a 30 años. ¿Cuál es su opinión en los proyectos que van a inundar Laguna Salada actualmente?
So the panel is taking a long-term perspective, and that's over 50 years, meaning more than 50 years. And it's also very concerned about climate change, and so it's taking what you just described into account. And I think what I'm going to do is try to answer two questions, yours and also Tom Sefton's written question. We have an email for input to our panel. And I wonder if Dario or Azucena, if you could put that email into the chat. And I would appreciate your forwarding your report on tidal changes in the Sea of Cortez to that email address. It's the Salton Sea, it's input. Well, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but we'll put it in the chat for you.
I just put it in the chat.
Oh, great. And so, yeah, and so that's, and Tom and any of the others who've submitted information, the door is closed for new additions to what you've submitted, but there's a window open, and that window is just submitting materials to the panel, and so that email that you just got is the way to do that. Okay.
Parte de la respuesta de Bren era de que el panel está mirando a las opciones que hay a largo plazo, así que no es en cómo va a impactar el Salton Sea hoy o mañana, sino también cómo va a afectar el Salton Sea, o sea, la solución a largo plazo. Bren también dio de que aquí en el chat puse yo el correo electrónico donde pueden todos enviar estudios que se ven o cosas que quieren mandarle al panel o quieren asegurarse que el panel están accesando estos diferentes temas.
First, thank you, Azucena. Let me congratulate Janet for figuring out how to use Zoom much faster than I figured out how to use Zoom. And you may ask a question.
Hey, yeah, I've actually used a lot of Zoom, but I think because there are so many people on this meeting, which is great, it's a little bit tougher to see the functions. Anyway, I have what are a couple of hopefully quick questions. From a totally personal perspective, I'd like to say I find having a bilingual meeting helpful. I like having all of the participants together, and it gives me a chance to reflect on the question that was just asked or the comment that was just made before it plunges ahead into the next stage. I totally get that people have different reactions to things and may feel differently. I just wanted to mention that from a personal perspective, that I find it helpful. So my questions are, when will the final report be done at this point? You know, through the feasibility report, the fatal flaw, all that, when are we going to get the final recommendation, endorsements, whatever it's going to be, projected timeline? And also a question that didn't get answered from somebody earlier is how much is the state paying the independent scientific panel to do this report? And then the last thing, I think I can probably guess, but you mentioned that you're hanging on to the 5 rejected proposals for future reference, and I was just wondering why. Thank you very much.
Entonces, Janet Wilson tenía 3 preguntas. Bueno, pues dijo 3 diferentes cosas. Una es de que le gustaba ver la traducción en el mismo cuarto, ya que siempre es separación entre español y inglés. Y quería preguntar de que cuándo se va a dar el último reporte, o sea, el reporte resumido. También miró que nosotros habíamos dicho que el panel va a agarrar los 5 grupos eliminados para volver a resesionar después. Quería saber por qué se está haciendo eso.
So as PI, I should know the answer to the budget question. And I should have anticipated that someone might ask, and I didn't do either. And so we'll look it up, and hopefully before, well, the meeting supposedly ended 1 minute ago, but if the rest of you are happy to stay on a bit, I'm happy to. And we'll try to look it up and tell you how much. And then the next, and I'm afraid I only remember 2 out of 3 of your questions. The next one is, why would the panel retain elements of a concept that did not pass the screening report? And the reason is that one of the options that the state gave the panel was to draw from the whole body of submissions to put together what it thought was the ideal approach to water importation, either in addition to those proposals that themselves passed, all the reviews, or as a substitute if none of the proposals pass all the reviews. And so that's why I said that that the panel is keeping in mind everything that it sees, even things that don't or won't pass the fatal flaw analysis. It could be that there's something about those ideas that are still excellent, but they just don't pass that particular analysis.
Thanks. The first question was actually the biggest. When do you anticipate the report to be done?
September.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That was the easiest question. So, we're aiming for September.
Okay.
Do you want to show the slide for those meetings?
I think I will.
And while Brent is pulling that up, I'm gonna translate real quick. So budget is around I'm sorry, I'm translating in English. Oh my gosh. Okay, Spanish. El costo del proyecto de que el panel está haciendo es más o menos 2 millones, que no, está bajo el contrato. Brent también quería explicar que el reporte resumido será en septiembre. Y aquí les está enseñando una imagen de las juntas que están por venir y cuáles están por todavía pasar.
So, yeah, here are the upcoming meetings we have planned. We hope next month in May, probably late May, to present the panel's fatal flaw analysis. And then August will be what we're calling the feasibility analysis. And that will be the even deeper dive on any submissions that pass through the fatal analysis. And if the panel decides to do a combined submission, then that would appear in August as well. And then in September, that's just I guess it's a summing up, but I think the substance will, we're aiming for August, but it may be September for for what you're really interested in and what the panel's excited and looking forward to providing.
Y quería nomás bajar otra vez a la pregunta que no pude traducir, a la respuesta a la pregunta que no pude traducir a tiempo, que era de que el panel había decidido que unos conceptos, aunque son eliminados en el informe de evaluación, van a todavía ser considerados después porque todavía no se sabe si todos los otros conceptos que pasaron al análisis de fallas fatales van a pasar el análisis de fallas fatales o no. Así que pueda que ni uno pase o pueda que unos sí pasen. Todavía no se sabe. Es muy temprano en el proceso. Y aquí Brent está explicando las juntas que van a pasar. Si quieren puede tomar un screenshot de esto, pero el reporte final es en septiembre.
All right. Let's see. Why don't we... Okay, Paul M. We'll do, Stephanie, you're next, but let's do one from chat from Paul M. And that is, would you please clarify about submitting additional information as the submissions are locked? What kind of info can be sent in at this point? And about responses to the RFI. I think, Paul, what you are suggesting is, what about a complete new submission, a full concept? And I would say that the panel at this point would not be able to evaluate a new submission because it's taken them months to get this far. However, that email that you now have is open to anything you wish to submit related to long-term importation. And so I would say that what you submit would not be treated the same way as the submissions that met the regular deadlines, but the information would be brought into the mix of ideas. I hope that's a satisfactory perspective on that. Stephanie? Oh, still muted.
All right, thank you. I realized. Okay, cool. I just thank y'all for this meeting and the timely report for starters, and also want to echo Janet Wilson's comments about how, I mean, you got to appreciate Azucena's translation skills right there. I mean, and on the spot, and that gives me a chance to kind of brush up on mine as well. Anyway, so I can appreciate that there. And I guess my question would be kind of to the realm of is there going to be like should I be, sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. I heard that y'all said something about a combination of a report. I really like that idea because that's kind of what I had in mind when I submitted my proposal, looking at what had been submitted already, where were the gaps, and where what's needed, and as well as how can we kind of sew these all together, and what are we trying, and how can we meet the SSMP's asks, as it were. So, anyways, I'm just wondering, is there a point of contact that we should be meeting with the SSMP person that's interested in or do we just sit back, relax, and kind of let y'all do your thing? Or I really do like that combination, but where, I guess for the rejected proposals, as it were, for now, where do we go from here? I guess my question is there. Thank you.
Sure. Well, let's let Susana translate that.
Well, lo que acaba de decir Stephanie es básicamente, Brent, just want to tell everybody, Stephanie is the lead for Quantum Consultations, and she, one of the teams that were screened out. Just wanted to clarify that. That's what she's asking this. Stephanie está preguntando que, ¿qué es ahora lo que ella puede hacer, ya que su concepto fue eliminado? ¿Qué son los siguientes pasos para ella, ya que pueda que sean considerados después?
First of all, Stephanie, it's very nice to meet you. And thank you for your submission. At this point, the panel will be forwarding your submission to SSMP. And so I would say that's, we don't really have a plan beyond that we're sending it forward. So I would say engaging in the public meetings and there are a couple of committees that have been formed by the state that could be taking it up. So
I'm happy to elaborate on that as well if we'd like to. I'm a member of the Long Range Planning Committee.
Oh, that would be great. Please, Carrie.
Sure, thank you so much. Yeah, this particular panel was to evaluate specifically water import. There are a number of other different projects that have been put forward for salt and sea restoration over the last few years. There are short-term plans and long-term plans for salt and sea restoration. So the Natural Resources Agency and a few different state bodies have formed different committees, including the Long Range Planning Committee, which is in the process of reviewing a number of smaller scale and non-water import projects that will be more finalized once we have the information from UC Santa Cruz, because then we'll know if there's actually enough water to do these things. But Stephanie, you'd want to direct your project probably to the Long Range Planning Committee, where we'll be happy to review the feasibility and helpfulness of the project to restoration initiatives. And I just wanted to encourage everyone here, let's look at this and how can we have enough water in this region? How can we keep things alive? All of these projects that we're focusing on in the Long Range Planning Committee that we've been reviewing for a decade are all going to do better if there's enough water. If we don't, we lose the animals and the ability to keep people here. And so I really encourage your esteemed team. You are paving the way for a sustainable future in the southwestern United States. This can solve the drought issues if we do this right. You are at the table choosing how to solve our drought issues, and we encourage you, and we're excited for this, that this is moving forward. And someone said pray for rain. We need a lot more than that. We need to add water if we're going to live in Southern California and the southwestern United States. So we encourage that. I'm the former mayor of the West Shores, and this is what the people want. I'd like to invite any of you who haven't been before to the Salton Sea. On April 23rd, we're hosting a large Earth Day event. Should be a few hundred people supporting Salton Sea restoration. If you would like to come speak about adding water and supporting long-term sustainability of the Salton Sea, please reach out. We're at ecomediacompass.org. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Our residents and people believe in you.
Thank you. Dario, I have a Dario Leon, our event coordinator today. I'm asking if we can download our chat so we don't lose it, because we have lots of messages, and as I've been scanning them, I've seen one good one after another, and I don't want to lose these. So if we can figure out how to hang on to those, because some of them we just won't be able to get to we won't be able to get to all of them this evening. Yeah, and thank you, Carrie, very much for those comments. And Azucena, I haven't given you a chance to translate. So
It's okay.
Translate the last 10 minutes.
I took some bullet point summary notes. Entonces, Paul me había hecho una pregunta que si quería preguntar qué tipo de conceptos serían aceptados ahora que ya pasó la fecha de meter su concepto. Pueden enviar sus ideas todavía al correo electrónico que compartí en el chat, pero aunque no serían consideradas como una solicitud, una respuesta a la solicitud que se abrió el año pasado, de todos modos serían tomado en consideración por el panel, no al mismo nivel, pero todavía ayudaría de una forma. Brent respondió a otra pregunta que no hay un plan de cómo pueden seguir los conceptos que fueron eliminados en esta evaluación, los 5 que fueron eliminados, pero Carrie de Ecomedia Compass había dicho que pueden mandárselos al comité de planificación de largo plazo y pueden seguir involucrándose en las siguientes juntas del público para seguir sabiendo qué más se podría hacer en su involucración.
Let's go to Rob Simpson next.
Yeah, hi, Brent. I did want to introduce myself a little bit. My name is Rob Simpson, Director of Development for Aegis Inc. And yes, we have one of those projects for importing seawater.
Nice to meet you, Rob.
Nice to meet you too. And my intent is to work. I know Carrie, well, not know him personally, and or Tom Septon. We've had communications to a limited extent. And I want to work with this process because I really do like what you guys are doing, taking this scientific approach and using community input. To that end, one thing I would like to ask, in the fatal flaw analysis, which I'm well educated in, one risk factor that needs to be analyzed is, let's say, international risk, in this case, Mexico. Mexico has a huge problem with current subsidence of the Colorado River Delta, increased flooding. What are they going to do with this to avoid excess seawater going up the Mexicali River Valley, invading their aquifers, et cetera, et cetera? The Tres Mares plan was intended to use excess tidal energy, potential energy from that rising water to drive currents through Laguna Salada and back down the coast. It is a sediment redistribution solution system that provides water within 7 miles or really close to the border, meaning that you can use a shorter pipeline, larger diameter, reduce friction, actually generate electricity from import. And it recreates the fishery that used to exist for the kukapa. What I'm asking is, has your team and or others considered what Mexico wants, what the indigenous, the kukapa want, what those individuals want? Because in order, if they don't want it, you can't really do it. You know what I mean? So I think you understand my question, and I look forward to talking with you further.
Well, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Azucena.
Rob Simpson estaba preguntando que si Brent sabía cómo el equipo está incorporando lo que los indígenas de México, o sea, el tribu Cúcapa, quiere, ya que ellos están invitados muy cerca de la laguna salada que se encuentra en México, donde muchos conceptos quieren extraer agua.
So the panel is very concerned about south of the border issues, and visited the Laguna Salada and potential inflow locations on the Sea of Cortez during its field visit. And so they are taking those concerns very seriously. So I can say, yes, the panel is very interested in that.
Brent dice que el panel está muy interesado en saber lo que piensa el tribu Cúcapa y toma muy seriamente cualquier cosa que tenga que ver con el sur de la frontera, o sea, México.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? Okay,
No.
Tom, before we get to you, let me take one off of the chat. It's from Jason McBride. And he has two questions. The first is, will the panel rank proposals or just validate their feasibility? And the second question, what happens after the panel results / recommendations are published? What action will this drive? So the first question,
Brent, Jason is made a submission for E2 Eden.
Oh, okay. Oh, glad you're here, Jason. And yeah, nice to virtually meet you. So the panel is debating the form that its final recommendations will take, and some on the panel are saying that they don't want to rank, they just want to evaluate. And others are saying, even if they just evaluate, the obvious preferences will emerge. And I've advised the panel as the PI that the public would appreciate a ranking if the panel can come up with one. If there is a ranking to be made, that the panel can, if the panel will agree on one, that they should rank. And so I'm afraid that the best answer I can give you is that I think there will be a ranking, either implicit or explicit, in what the panel finally presents. And then in terms of the results and recommendations, they will be submitted to SSMP and the Long Range Planning Committee. And I would say they will, at that point, the panel will dissolve because its job will be done. Let me finish, I was saying, and then I'll let you translate. The panel will dissolve, its job will be done, and it really, the fate of the recommendations will be as good as the recommendations are. And the panel's aware of this, and they are busy, in some cases, internationally renowned experts in their field, all with vast experience. And they joined this panel because they saw an opportunity to help a beleaguered region of the United States. And so they are really committed to trying to do the very best they can for the region, and to make a recommendation that finally cuts the Gordian knot and can move the area forward.
Jason McBride es uno de los líderes en un grupo que hizo un concepto de importación de agua que se llama E2 Eden, y él preguntó cómo el panel va a evaluar el informe de factibilidad. Todavía el panel no lo ha decidido, pero Brent ha recomendado que se hará una lista de grados donde califica cada concepto a un grado diferente. Los resultados serán entregados al programa de gestión y después de septiembre ya no habrá un panel. Brent quería decir que los miembros del panel son expertos y son reconocidos internacionalmente, así que su involucración en este análisis será terminado en septiembre.
Tom, why don't you go next?
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Azucena Beltran for doing a fine job of translating on the fly. And I personally, I do not find it at all distracting, and I think it's great. I want to thank the panel for the expertise that you're bringing to it. Selected a good group of people, and Dr. Haddad, yourself, you're a name in the water treatment industry and well known and well respected. I have a couple of questions. A little bit of, in a way, a follow-up. We kind of already answered my question about things being locked on October 12th. There is new information. So to what degree can we submit new information? I'll give you one example, and she's on this session. Jenny Ross submitted a report on the impacts of Salton Sea restoration solutions on carbon emissions. Salton Sea has been a net carbon sink for a century, and some solutions will cause it to emit more greenhouse gas, and some solutions will cause it to emit less. And will that, you were sent that information, and will that be a consideration? I hope you can comment on whether that would be evaluated in your final report phase. And then there's other things like, for example, assumptions made about cost escalations in October for, when we were at a very low inflation rate, may be very different now. So can one or should one submit updated cost evaluations, or do we just stay where it was on October 12th, for example? Thanks.
So, Susanna, if you'd like to.
You could go ahead and answer, Brent.
Okay.
I'll just do it in one.
Sure. So the panel takes greenhouse gas emissions very seriously. They also take, they're also taking energy consumption issues very seriously. They have a long-term perspective. And so I can say that, yes, those are the greenhouse gas implications of the different approaches are being evaluated. And evaluated and discussed, I can tell you from being in the meetings. And in terms of submitting additional information, I think that whatever is submitted will be reviewed. And so we had a deadline, and many groups, met the deadline. There was a deadline for resubmissions, but a couple folks have approached us saying, well, we want to submit more now. And so I don't want to reopen. This is now more of a PI thing. I don't want to reopen that original deadline, but we do have the window of just the submissions to the panel, information submissions. And if you're very clear about what you're submitting, then it can be evaluated. Does that make sense? Oh, go ahead.
Ok, Tom Sutton había preguntado que si el panel está tomando en serio las gases emisivas y si han sido discutidas mucho o no. También ha preguntado qué piensa el panel de la consumpción de energía. Bren contestó que el panel ha estado tomando esas cosas muy en serio y las ha discutido mucho. También quiso contestar a su otra pregunta que cómo podría meter nuevos materiales que ya son más recientes. Tom Sutton había metido, fue un líder de un concepto que fue sometido de importación de agua, y Bren respondió que él no quisiera abrir otra vez la fecha de poder meter nuevos conceptos, pero que Tom puede meter sus nuevos materiales que son más recientes al correo electrónico que fue proveído.
Thanks. Jason, why don't you go next?
For questions?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Excellent. So you asked the question about what actions follow and whether we'll rank. So I have two more questions. Would it be possible to engage and email you directly, or would you prefer that we don't? And then the second question is, could we reach out to other teams, perhaps engage with each other, cross-pollinate ideas? Is that something that, you know, for the sake of transparency, I don't know, wanted to get your take on whether that was feasible or not?
So in terms of emailing, emailing me, that's fine. And what I do is I forward every project related email to that same input because we want complete transparency and absolutely no conflicts of interest. And we don't want any side conversations, and that covers the support team and the panel. But sure, from an information perspective, you can email me, and I will forward the email to that broader input, just so it's captured.
Okay, so basically the same effect as emailing that other one, right? The generic consultancy authority. Okay, perfect. Just wanted to check.
Sure.
Jason preguntó que si podía discutir cosas con otros miembros del panel o no. Brett dice que le puede mandar un correo electrónico a él, pero seguirá el proceso de mandar ese correo electrónico a nuestro correo público, donde recibimos todos los comentarios del público. Y es nomás para mantener la individualidad del panel.
And then
Carrie,
one of those.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I also wanted to add that Asazina has done a phenomenal job helping keep us up to date and sending material our way. So I wanted to also throw that in.
Thank you.
She's the best. And we are so lucky that she's on our team. There was one other hand up, but it after a long patient wait, it went down. And Jason, or do you want to ask one more question?
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on that second part, which was, you know, regarding conflicts of interest and so forth. Are there any issues or guidelines or anything you'd have to advise us on regarding reaching out to other teams, maybe cross-pollinate ideas, have discussions? Is that something that we should refrain from, or are there ways that you suggest we go about that?
I think that it's fine with the panel if the teams reach out to each other, work together, brainstorm together, but the panel is only evaluating what was submitted. And so that's, yeah, the panel is, they're almost like a jury off in the jury room at this point. And we're keeping the door locked until they're done as best we can. With the exception of that email that we shared with you.
I see. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure. Do you want to ask Daniel?
Jason más preguntó que si los que hicieron una submisión de conceptos de importación de agua pueden comunicarse con uno al otro, y Brent afirmó que sí pueden, y de hecho Carrie está apoyando de que trabajen con uno al otro. I just added on that Carrie just put on the comments that they highly encourage the teams to work together. So we know there's a lot of other questions that were not answered on the chat, but these will be recorded so we can get back to you if it wasn't answered during this meeting.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring in Jenny E. Ross has been communicating with me, and just real quick, if you can just answer her question.
Okay.
Hero, I previously submitted a report and supplemental information to the email address you mentioned concerning potential major greenhouse gas emissions from proposed Salton Sea long-range plans. Please confirm you received these materials and explain whether the issues I raised will be considered by the panel. Thank you.
And who is this?
Jenny E. Ross.
She had a very well done study about greenhouse gas emissions and how keeping those down is very good for the region and the world.
Yes, this was received, and we have it logged on every email we get, and this public input email gets logged where the whole panel can access it and view it. And it just maintains the panel's independency and still allows them to hear from any sources the public is sending their way. But yes, we did receive it.
And I can add to that, Jenny, and thanks, Dario, for raising this. I can add to that the panel is discussing this, and now that you've raised with me here, I can, if they haven't already reviewed what you submitted, I can bring it to their attention. I think we are coming, $2 million is the contract amount for the panel and support team. And there was, maybe I'll finish with Paula's comment. Paula Marvin, she writes, "My daughter was married there last weekend. It is worth saving. It is beautiful and we need it to survive." So with that very nice sentiment, why don't we finish for this evening? And I just want to thank all of you for spending your evenings with us. And we look forward, we're working hard. The panel is really dedicated, and we have an excellent support team, and we look forward to sharing our next report with you next month.
Muchas gracias a todos por quedarse más tiempo y ser pacientes con nosotros, y nos miramos el siguiente mes cuando demos el análisis de fallos fatales. And that's a wrap. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. When can you share the transcript? We have a lot of people that would love to see this that weren't able to